Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Drive Fitness Podcast. This is your host, Tom Driver. Today, my guest is a friend of mine named Rohit, or known as his artist name Blasé. He is a musician. He is also a computer programmer, and he's also a storyteller. I'm going to replace the intro song this week with a Blasé original. Enjoy.
God only knows where you're going in those clothes. God only knows where you're going. Red dress, I just wanna get to know your red dress. It's getting late in California, God bless. When I see you coming over, red dress.
What's going on?
What's up, man? How are you doing?
Pretty good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, dude, happy to have you. What do you prefer, Rohit or Blasé at this point?
I've kind of done a good job of keeping them separate. I mean, we go back a few years, so like you're already acquainted with my actual name, so I'm okay with Rohit. But a lot of people, like, once I started doing the music stuff, they only know me as Blasé.
Yeah.
Like, there's some people I've worked with that don't even know what my real name is. I don't mind keeping those two things separate.
So even at work, some people call you Blasé?
Not at work. Like I said, I do keep it separate. So a lot of people at work, aside from like a few close friends, don't even know I do music. I kind of keep it two separate entities. And then when they do kind of like overlap, then I'm like, all right, cool. But then at that point, they already know me as one or the other. So
well, this interview might get a little crazy because we're going to overlap right now, man. We're going to
I know.
talk about music and we're going to talk about technology.
That's what's up.
When we post this out, you want to be Blasé or you want to be Rohit? I feel like we should put Blasé.
You can if you want. I mean, on socials, I'm only there really as Blasé. So
Blasé is just a dope name, dude. I love that name. How'd
yeah.
you come up with Blasé?
The word itself popped into my head from like a Ty Dolla $ign song. There's one with like Royce Strummer, right?
Yeah, dude.
So like, I mean, I've always known of the word, but like, you know, he has
with Future, right?
I think there's a version with
Blasé.
Yeah, there's a version with Future and like Royce Strummer in it.
Like a remix, maybe.
Yeah, the original has just Royce Strummer, and I think there's like a handful of remixes of it. I performed one of them live.
Really? Maybe
Yeah.
Future did a song called Blasé. Maybe there's been multiple songs called Blasé.
Maybe, but I also feel like the way that song sounds, like the hook could sound like Future, so maybe it's on there. But so, I mean, like I've known what the word was, and that song kind of just like gave off that vibe of like, I don't really care, like everything's...
Wait, what does the word have a meaning?
It's like nonchalant, like not impressed, and...
But it's kind of bougie sounding too, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, like that song is like that. It's like, it's very like carefree, and in a work setting, I'm kind of the opposite of that. The whole music thing is more of an outlet to like be a little more, not necessarily reckless, but like the attitude is more reckless in a sense. So I don't know. I thought it was kind of fitting.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, dude, is because you seem like you've just been putting a lot of energy into this music stuff, dude. It's motivational, dude. You got a real drive to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So it's not insanely nonchalant on your end, man. I see you working hard, dude.
The attitude's there. I mean, like the recent stuff, it's a little more lively than some stuff I might have shown you in the past, but it's all like it's very collaborative to some extent. So it kind of like pushes me like to certain bounds that I wouldn't have done before. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool in that sense. Yeah.
No, dude, I find the same thing with my app, right? Once we start linking up with other people, then all of a sudden your project starts pulling you instead of you pushing it. On the album, you have like a partner, right?
His name is Mike. He goes by mikewave as a musician, and we've been friends since like 2nd or 3rd grade. So we go way back, and like to kind of go on your point, I started with the band. I've always liked the collaboration aspect of it, but I remember everyone just kind of like got separated, especially when we actually did go off to college, you know, so I wanted to do something that gave me a little more liberty to do things on my own terms, and like I can let people in that, like to collaborate because I still love it, but I'm not restricted by that. And so that's kind of what made me do it in the first place.
No, I feel you. Bands kind of went out of style, and I didn't know why, but I wonder if it's for that reason, right? Because if you're in a band, like the 4 of you are a band, you need everyone present to make music, and they can't go, if they go make music with another band, it's like kind of shunned, right? Where like in this day and age, you can just be like a group of artists, and then if you want to go make a song by yourself, like no one cares. If you want to go make a song with another group of artists, it gives you that more flexibility, right? You know, and then once you guys do get together, then it's fire. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So, kind of like a Top Dog Entertainment, rap group, right? They don't have to work together. They all have their own stuff going on until they link up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was kind of like the entire mindset was based on that idea.
So wait, what is your album called? Let's give you a little plug real quick.
So the album's called Vitae. The official word is like pronounced in a bunch of different ways, like Vitae. Like initially we thought it was Vita, like life kind of, but there's a bunch of different pronunciations. For the sake of our thing, we just went with Vitae.
How do you spell it for people who are trying to look that up on Spotify?
Vitae.
Vitae. Okay.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. I got to give it to you, dude. I love this album.
I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. I really liked you because, you know, when like your friend shows you music and you're like, wow, this is like really good for like someone who's just my friend, you know? Like, good job. When I hear your music, I'm like, damn, dude, this is just good. Like, this is just good, period. Like, compared to, like, Future or any of those other artists I listen to, like, I just throw that into my other playlists, and I'm like, damn, dude, you are doing professional-level music. Like, how are you pulling off this professional-level quality?
First of all, I appreciate it. I get a little awkward when I'm showered with, like things like what you just said, but I do really appreciate it.
It's weird, man, but you're gonna have to get used to it, I think.
In terms of going for like that commercial quality, that's something I've kind of always obsessed with from like even middle school when I was like trying to make like record stuff then. And it didn't like just kind of like start happening like that. Like we had some pretty terrible recordings. Like it would literally just be like like laptops have like those voice recording apps or whatever. It would literally just be us like putting up a piano right next to it and us being on the other side of the laptop and like making sure the volumes just kind of matched up to sound like a recording. It was like that dumbed down. And then over time we kind of just like learned one thing after the other until it kind of like added up to what you hear now. A lot of it you can learn. A lot of people can just learn it and by like YouTube videos or just talking to other people. And luckily I got to, like, especially in college, I got to meet a lot of people that knew their way around like sound design and just how to use certain softwares, and that kind of eventually like snowballed into me knowing everything I know. And I have to give Mike a lot of credit because especially in this last project, he took a lot of effort to learn what his favorite artists, like their producers, would do and what their mixing engineers did.
Wow.
And those people give out those information. Like you can reach out to them on social media. They even post like podcasts like these and like really just tell you what to do. But many people don't realize that, or they don't take it seriously. Or there's like this general mentality of like, oh, I can't do it because I'm not them, you know? And so we were like, that's BS. We can figure it out somehow. And that's kind of what we did. And I swear to God, it's just a mindset thing. Nothing we've done is something you couldn't do. It's literally just a time commitment, I would say.
No, I feel you. Between like the podcast and the app, and now I'm starting to do merchandise, everything I'm doing, it felt like some of these things were like impossible to do by yourself. But everything's online these days, man. There's just a learning curve. There's like a 12 to 24 hour learning curve with a lot of these skills, and you just got to literally spend that time, right? And just like focus in. And things I did like animations, right? It just felt like, oh man, I can't like actually create animations, but you can. All that information is there online, you know?
Yeah, I feel that.
I like that your music does have that professional quality, right? And I try to do the same here. Like if you notice, like with the podcast setup, like I might not be the biggest podcast in the world, but at least I'm set up to the quality where I got 2 good mics, 2 good cameras. Like this could be a professional podcast. I don't know if it will, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like you do the same with your music. All the mixing is perfect. All the, like you said, the sound engineering is like the way the professionals are doing it right now. You're ready to blow up, possibly, right? I mean, you know, you're at that quality level, which is pretty impressive, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, even like I see your setup right now, and I'm like, I'm sure this was not like anyone's first idea of like having it all like you know, like ready to go. They're probably just like plugging and playing at some point, and eventually you were probably like, oh, if I want to just like have everything set up all at once so you can just kind of hop into it. And like over time, like we did the same thing. We were just like, we want to be able to make something industry level with like a click of a button, you know? So
yeah.
So
like we were talking about the editing too, right? It doesn't just end with the setup. I go and I make sure our voices sound good afterwards, and I'm sure you guys with your music have to go in and do a lot more of that, you know, to make sure that everyone like I don't know, it's just the worst when you hear a good song and like someone's like the beat is just way louder than their voice or something, like just throws it off, and you're like, oh no, dude, like the mixing could have been better on that, dude, and it would have been sick. Yeah,
people take it for granted. Like we were just talking about the editing stuff not too long ago, and people think like the professionals don't need to edit it. They think they're just naturally that good at something. And in some cases they are, but in other cases they just have someone who's paying attention to every microscopic detail and making sure it puts the best foot forward on every front. I have no doubt in my mind your podcast does that as well. You pay attention to like certain things and you're like, will people enjoy that? Is that keeping them engaged? Is that up to the standard that people are expecting of me? And is it up to the like an internal standard you have for yourself? And so I mean, I think that applies to a bunch of things, not just music.
I go through and I'll take out any big pause where someone's like, I'll take that out. So I don't want to waste people's time with listening to a bunch of ums and, you know, boring stuff. And I can tell a lot of other podcasts, they don't put that time into their editing. They don't really care. They just want to record something and throw it up there. And it's like, I don't know. Don't you want to care about your product and make it as best as possible? You really think it's going to be as best as possible if you have all these weird, you know, moments? You know, I don't know. I personally, I don't. And it seems like you put your best foot forward too with everything you do.
For me, like the first level is, am I okay with it? Like there's a lot of compromise when you work with other people, but like to some extent you should have an idea of what you're proud of at the end of the day. If you didn't feel comfortable putting out a podcast because there was a weird gap, one, you shouldn't feel guilty putting in that extra effort, and then two, it's like your product at the end of the day. You get to decide how you're presented and whatever you're doing. And so like in a similar thing, like some people don't like a lot of breathing in like recordings, like breaths in between words or whatever. Like sometimes it's stylistic, sometimes it's not. It really depends on what you're doing.
I like that you brought up like if you're happy with it. I talked about this with Dan on one of my podcasts. We were talking about his YouTube channel and just saying like, you got to make this stuff for yourself. You know, you got to be happy with your product. You got to really enjoy what you're doing. You can't just make a podcast or make a YouTube channel for other people's enjoyment, right? Do you do that with your music? Do you start with like, let me make a song that means a lot to me or something that I like? Or do you kind of look to your fans for inspiration, or how does it start?
At the end of the process, I do try and consider both. In terms of how each one starts, I feel like it varies. A lot of people will ask you like, oh, are the words what you start with, or is the beat what you start with? It's like a similar thing when you're looking at like, who are you catering to? Like sometimes it might be like, oh, I want to make a hype song that people can like turn all the way up when they're driving down a highway or something. Or there can be some other ones where it's more like cathartic or therapeutic for me to write it, and I want to do it as like a form of my own like expression. With this album specifically, it was definitely that combination. Some of them has like a heavy bass, like a bass line, and then there might be some where it's like a little softer, and you're supposed to be a little more like intimate or in tune with the emotional side of an experience. You can kind of tell which ones are more catered towards like just an auditorial enjoyment versus something that has some substance to it. So yeah, I mean, it's a mix. I don't think you should only do one or the other if you're doing what I'm doing. Some people, they write like I don't know, like they write poetry or something. They're not necessarily going to share that with anyone. You can just do whatever you want. It doesn't even matter. Like the standards we were talking about earlier, it might just be the sake of you writing something down that's important to you. So the way you like wrap it up might change depending on who's there like on the receiving end of what you're doing. So
well, even if you're making a hype song where someone can bump it on the highway, it doesn't necessarily have to be for someone else. It could be a song that you want to hear when you bump it down the highway. You know, like hype music can be for yourself too. You know, I don't think it has to be something that you don't enjoy as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, to go off of that, even the hype ones, like, have you ever like been in your car and you listen to like a really hype song and you're like, I can feel it in my butt, like like the bass, right? And believe it or not, that is not an easy thing to accomplish. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you pick out like the right sounds and you're like, you get lucky with it. But then there's other times where it's like you were like, it might sound cool in your headphones, but it doesn't sound as cool in your car or like whatever that is. And there's like a whole science behind it that a lot of people don't really look into as much.
Wow.
But we wanted to do that. And so like in terms of enjoying just like a hype song, even if it's not like a song with like, you know, like lyrical substance, like the design of it itself is like really exciting. Like just to be like, oh, like we were able to pull off this thing that like, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of Weeknd and like Future songs. Like they do a few songs like Low Life. They have like a really subby bass in that.
Yeah.
And it's like so hard to like get that kind of energy across. And there was one, I don't remember which song it was, but we wanted to recreate that like same feel where it feels you're like floating on the top of this bass kind of thing when you're sitting in your car. And whether or not that song did well, like we didn't care if it flopped, but we were able to pull off that like feeling in your butt when you're riding in the car. And like tiny things like that go unnoticed when you're like not looking for them. But I guarantee you, like if you start looking at those tiny details, then you go like it gives you like a new sense of appreciation for whatever it might be, you know? Like even like a lot of rappers don't produce their own music, but like it'll give you a sense of appreciation as to what goes into the final product, whoever it might be. Like there might be like a ghostwriter or a ghost producer on it, but like at least for me, that process like of a lot of people coming together and doing something and you knowing that and being able to appreciate that like takes it to a whole different level, you know? Yeah, like things like that, like those tinier details that like even for me now, I don't think about them all too often anymore, but those are the things that make it worth it for me and what keeps me like interested in it.
It's crazy that like going the extra mile on like our end, someone who's a content creator, is like what just makes it seamless for someone else, right? When I listen to your music, I'm not thinking about why this slaps in my car, right? I'm just enjoying it, but it's your extra mile that made it seamless for me. In fact, if you didn't put in all that extra effort, then I would start noticing that it doesn't slap in the car, and I'm like, oh, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's crazy that we put in all this work just for it to just like go unnoticed essentially on the other end. But that's you don't want people to start noticing like, oh, this only sounds good in my headphones, or you know what I'm saying, or like, wow, the bass is like kind of weird, you know.
Yeah, there's a
you
lot
want
of
it just to like be an experience, you know.
For sure. I mean, I don't know if you've heard this before, but like there's like this one, I don't know if there's like an official term for it, but like in a lot of rock alternative music, a lot of people don't really notice that there's a bassist playing bass, but it's one of those things where when it's not there, then you start picking up on it, and you're like if this feels a little empty for some reason, and you just don't know why, you know? And so, I mean, a lot of those tiny details is that professional touch that you don't realize, like, people who are doing it for, like, a living, like, already know. And again, they give off that seamless vibe. Like, a lot of people think, oh, it's like, I just need fancy, expensive software to sound like the pros. But it's not that. It's literally just like this tiny detail that you didn't realize was being included in everything. That anyone can do it. But it's a matter of figuring out what those things are, and then again taking the time to like put it into practice.
Let's talk about your style for a moment, because I don't even think you're a rapper.
I never have tried to be a rapper.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy more of the singing anyways, and I've like experimented with it, but it's like, again, like there's like a whole image I try to maintain to some extent, and rapping is just not a part of it. Like in my last one, they asked like, do you want to freestyle? And I'm like, am I a rapper? Like, I don't know. I think it's really admirable to be a rapper. Like, we have a few rappers on the album, and I've seen them work, and it is like, it's exhausting to watch because their brain operates at such a high capacity that it's like, I can't even imagine like being like that all the time. But it's like, it's in every way an advantage to them. Like, it's like, it's super admirable what they do. And a lot of people hear rap and they don't realize like how much goes into it, you know, and like seeing under the hood in those like type of sessions like really gives like me an appreciation. But in no way like could I be a rapper in real life.
Yeah, I've made a little bit of rap music, not enough I'd want to show anybody, but it's like writing like really dense poetry, right? You know what I'm saying? And then trying to like, I was okay at writing, but then I wasn't good at the part where you actually spit it and have it like sound good on the mic, right? Then you also have to like blend in with these singers and like have a good sound to your rap as well, right? I don't know. I think a lot of these new rappers are moving towards more like melodic flows and stuff, and people are really switching up just like what even it means to be a rapper, which is why I like your group, because you guys all kind of blend in between this singer rapper like spectrum, you know? Because even you're singing, but like sometimes you're spitting, you know? Like sometimes you have you got bars to it, you know?
It's a good, I mean, I like the blend. I mean, I like for rappers, like it's very rhythm heavy, and then like obviously singers are more melodic. And I hear what you're saying on like even like DaBaby, like we'll like start adding like singing to it a little bit, and like that's just the trend of like where things are going. And I don't know if there's a need to kind of separate them anymore. Like I like, I'm super entertained by it, and I think it like none of us are like intentionally doing one thing or the other, but I think that's just kind of like the natural evolution of things. But I think it makes for a better product at the end. So
you guys all just kind of consider yourself artists then, not really in one lane or the other?
So like a lot of people in our group, like I mean, me and Mike ourselves, I think both of us would identify as singers before rappers.
Okay.
But there's definitely people in our group, like The Hangover. The other two people on that song are both proclaimed as rappers.
So I thought that The Hangover had Mike on it rapping. So...
He sings the hook. He doesn't. He's not doing any of the verses though. I'm doing the last verse. We have a guy named Stretch Dynamo in the second, and then the guy who starts out is this guy Armas. He's like an Indian Eminem. Like he's crazy though. Like he is like definitely one of the most talented people. But he's the one you're hearing like at the start of that song.
So I think I was confusing Mike with some of these rappers who are like sprinkled throughout your project because I just know your voice. And then when it goes away from you, sometimes I just assume that's Mike, right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's
but
fair.
you do have rappers sprinkled throughout the project.
We have about 4 songs that I would say like dabble in the hip hop like region, but only 2 of them actually have rappers on them. So yeah.
Okay, so my favorite song is Red Dress on the album. I just want to talk about that for a minute. Who's the saxophone guy on there? What's it like working with him?
So
that saxophone is just it's beautiful, man. I love it.
Yeah, I mean he's mad talented. His name is Eric. He goes by Saxmeister.
Saxmeister.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a play on the instrument and his like actual name. But he was my roommate my last year in college, and music was like one of the only things we could really bond over. And so it started out as like just like getting drunk like every now and then and like recording whatever and like hoping it comes to something. And I was like, all right, I'm working on this album. And it'd be really cool to have some live instrumentation. Because, you know, like, even when we first met, I was making a little more, like, electronic-y type stuff. And Mike is primarily, he's actually, like he drove a lot of, like, guitar influence onto our album. So there's already this element of live instrumentation all over the place. And I was like, if there's a time to have someone play sax on a song, this is the time. And that song has, like, a very, like, Vegas-y casino vibe to it. And I was like, it doesn't get better than that. Like, there's no better setup to have a saxophone player on it. So I brought him on. He's like very easy to work with. Like we have history and he can do a lot of it by ear. Like he knows what he's doing. Like if I like hum a tune, he'll know how to play it like immediately. And that combined with, you know, like we already had a vision for where it was going to go. We could kind of tell him exactly what we were looking for. And he was able to riff off of that a little bit. And we kind of, it's like what you hear in the recording now is like a culmination of all of that.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that, like, when I listened to it, that was, like, by far my favorite song. And then if I go look at your Spotify, it's not even in the top 5 on that album, which I think means it's a good album, right? Like, if people can't agree on what the best song is, then, okay, you got something special going on here. Because there's certain albums where, like, everyone likes the same 2 songs and the rest of the album doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But to have someone like me be like, wow, this is my favorite song, and it's not even in the top 5 general favorite songs of the album, all right, well, then there's certain points of this album that hit different for different people, you know, which is good. What's your personal favorite on the album?
Personal favorite? There's a few. If I had to pick one, the first one, some people like were fighting me. It's a slow song. It's like a slow piano like song, but the reason it's important to me is I actually wrote that one.
Wait, what's the name?
No Forever.
No Forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the very first one, and a lot of people were like, don't start on like a slow note. Like you want to like really like get the ball rolling to keep people engaged. But I mentioned it earlier, this album's actually a concept album, and No Forever is actually a song I wrote in high school, and we released it like back then, but the stuff I was going through then kind of bled into the storyline for this album, and I thought it was really important that I redo it in a more professional format, because back then we did it, but it was like, again, like we knew a lot more like later on, and I thought we could do the song more justice. And it tied in with the story of the rest of the album, and I was like, it's really important that I have it first, because I wanted it to be like serve as like a transition from like who I was like way back when and who I'm trying to be moving forward. And that song was also special, like really special to me, because I got all the original members of our old band to sing in that as well. So there's like so much, like there's so much meaning, and it's like layered with all these different, like, again, it's a very tiny thing. A lot of people who know us in high school definitely resonate well with that, because they know who all of us were, and they've seen us all, like all 4 of us now do music at our own capacity now. And to see all that come back together again.
Uh-huh.
It's like a high school reunion, and I was like, it's really important that they're all there. I enjoy the group stuff, but I need to also be able to do my own thing. And so it was kind of like getting my blessing from all the people I like came up with, you know, and move on from it. So a lot of people won't know that. Like, you're literally one of the only people to ever kind of like get me to talk about it.
Well, maybe people will listen to this episode, man.
Maybe,
I don't know.
yeah.
Well, to tie that back into earlier, I think that shows that you have this like artistic vision, and you weren't going to sacrifice it for what was going to get you more numbers or streams, right? We were saying like, oh, do you do this for yourself or not? I feel like that was a decision that you did for yourself that meant a lot for you. Yeah. And even though someone was recommending you put a hype song first or whatever, you were like, no, like this is my vision, this is my creation, like it's going to be like this. I think that's pretty admirable.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. Yeah, it definitely was a lot. Even Mike was like, are you sure you want to do this? One of the things I've learned through that whole process is you have to compromise a lot. You have to have a lot of patience, again, because we have like a lot of people coming in and out to build the final thing. But I was like, this one, I need you to like really trust me on this one. Currently, it's the best song on the album, like in terms of like numbers. So, I mean, numbers is one thing, but like after everything went down, I think everyone involved was like, that was a good call, you know? What I like about it sonically is it feels like it's the ending of a story, but it's actually just the beginning of the entire project. Again, a lot of layers. Like, if anyone like goes, like hears this and goes back and listens to it, I think they would like, they would hear what I'm talking about. Yeah,
I listened to it last night. I was kind of surprised that one had so many numbers for the type of song it was, right? It wasn't like that flashy song on your album. It was deeper, and it had enough views, right, where it didn't just resonate with people from your high school. Enough other people must have kind of felt what you were feeling when you wanted to put that one first.
For sure, yeah.
Can we talk about the concept, or do you kind of want that to be like left open?
I'm open to talk about it. I mean, I try to publicize it as much without annoying people.
If people are still listening at this point in the podcast, I think they care enough to
That's fair.
To tune in. So definitely was a romantic vibe to it at times, right? What is the overarching concept though?
It's loosely based on the like my past experience and Mike's past experience. We blended the two a good bit. We had a lot of similar like scenarios happen to us. So it's like a romantic take on a situation, but it's more of in the most abstract way possible. It's a self-growth story. You hear like the hype songs, you hear the sad songs, you hear like everything in between of those two. But what I wanted to do is kind of give context to that, because I feel like that's the only thing that could give something that's been done 100 times before. Like, it can give it more meaning if you can paint a picture around it, you know. It's more of like an elongated story, because, you know, like a lot of albums that like these days have a lot of cool songs, but you don't feel connected to them in any way. Like, they come and go like with the trends, you know. So I wanted something that kind of like lingered a little bit more. Are you familiar with like a hero's journey, like from like any kind of storyline, right? A lot of like Marvel movies do it, and I kind of like took inspiration from that a lot, because
the Odyssey and all those
like
stories,
like they have all these different stages, like points of failures, like finding a mentor. They have like trials, and then they finally like come to a point where they realize what they need to do. Acceptance. Like, you know, like I don't have them memorized or anything, but I wanted to like take after that, because it's like good storytelling, and
that's cool.
And I wanted to do that. So a lot of stories like start with the average person living their life, nothing's really bothering them, and then like a problem gets introduced and they try and face that problem, and they kind of like screw up the first time, and they kind of hit it like a rock bottom, and then the rest of the like movie or the book or whatever is kind of like them working their way back up to like the best version of themselves. I'm gonna tie it back into Marvel real quick. Did you watch like that first Spider-Man movie? From Marvel. And so you notice how they skipped the origin story, because everyone's used to it. Everyone knows exactly what it is. And that was a good move on their choice, because everything moving forward is brand new content. Like, no one's ever seen it before. So my idea was, I don't want to introduce a lover, like, or something to like this character's life. I'd rather start in the trenches and work our way up. A very small number of people do that. So that song like that you heard is actually the pit almost. You're almost at the pit. So that song is like a breakup song basically. But like when you hear it, you're like, all right, this person like is just trying to move on at that point. Like, he's upset, but he's trying to move on.
And there's lyrics throughout the album like, oh, I've come back to you or something. So there's like already themes of like, this is not a new person, right? Like,
it's not a new person.
This is not a new like relationship. This is something that's already burning. The light's kind of dim on it.
I mean, to put like a timeline on it, there's a song called Half a Decade towards the end, and the No Forever song happened 5 years ago from when we did this album. and the rest of the storyline of the album happened half a decade later. So
Interesting.
the way the story maps out falls perfectly in line with like the context of what we're talking about. The Hangover is actually like the rock bottom. You hear it, it's basically someone who's like going off the rails, and is like in complete denial of the situation. The way we picked our features also kind of ties into that. I mean, I don't know if you've personally been in that scenario before where you're like questioning, like, am I doing things right? Like, am I the problem or is everyone else the problem, kind of thing? And
Am I the toxic one, right?
yeah, pretty much. And so like me and Mike take turns being the main character, and all the different features are like different people in that story. So, you know, like the whole MC, again, everything I did was kind of like, I like the way they format their movies where like there's like 20 something movies, but they all tie into each other in different ways, you know? And so every time a person featured, it was like one of those movies, just adding more to like the overall plot. And in The Hangover specifically, when you're kind of running things through your mind, like internally, it kind of races, you know? You process things in your head faster than what you can vocalize sometimes. And I kind of nudged the two rappers on that song to treat themselves as like your mind, not like the person itself. What they wrote is in the perspective of your like inner thought.
That's so cool that they're talented enough and you guys are comfortable working together enough that you were able to kind of give them a direction and they were able to write, you know, some lines without you literally like ghostwriting for them or like them just doing their own thing on your song and having it not made sense. It's cool that you were able to kind of oversee that and give them some direction and then let them write some of their own lyrics that kind of fit into your story.
Yeah, for sure.
That must have been hard to pull off, dude.
It sounds cheesy, but like the communicating aspect of it is like really important. Like a lot of people, they'll just kind of like send you a recording and they'll be like, try and come up with something to this. I always made it a point to have a conversation with them
and give them some direction,
to give be like, here's where my head's at, like this is the bigger picture, because we always knew it was going to be a concept album. I literally typed up an entire storyline for the whole thing.
Whoa.
And gave it out to everyone, and
that's badass.
Made sure they like knew what was up, you know. And so like every other feature is like a random person that's coming into their life or like tempting them to like roll back into those like toxic environments.
So that's how you give them their own roles without completely controlling everything they say, right? Because
exactly.
they're just players in your story.
Exactly. Right? And what's cool about that is some of them, like the first guy who raps in The Hangover, I gave him a little bit of direction. And the second guy, Stretch, he just heard it. And like literally in 20 minutes, he wrote his entire verse to that. And we recorded it in the same day. Kudos to him. Like that was like a very smooth, like he's on 2 of our songs and he wasn't even supposed to be on that record. But we were just like, you're here, like why not try it? And it turned out to be really awesome. That kind of stuff, like you can't really plan for that. That kind of just happens on the whim sometimes.
It's a little bit of timing too, right?
You know,
it needs a little bit of magic to work out.
The rest of the story, it's like kind of just him working his way back up. He has like a desperate phase. And it's interesting actually, because when people hear it, they're a little turned off by it because they're like, this seems like very plasticky. Like it doesn't feel like there's substance to it. Like there's one song we have called Heartbeat where it's like basically like a super try-hard song where you're like, oh, I'll buy you anything you want. Oh, like even there's like a lyric in there that says like, way out in the nosebleeds, I can feel your heartbeat. The whole point of that is that even though we're like not that close, I feel like there's still a connection. And that's like like such a desperate thing to say. And we like name drop a lot of high-end brands like, oh, I'll buy you Saint Laurent or something like that. And people are like, you can't afford Saint Laurent. Like, why are you like talking about things that aren't realistic? And I'm like, well, if you like look into the story part of it, like the whole point is that this character is so desperate that he'll say and do whatever he can to like get with someone, you know? And so like people don't realize that up front, which is understandable.
That's such a cool way to talk about topics on your album too that might not make sense to yourself, is create this whole other character that can say these things that it's like, nah, it makes sense to the vision if you get it.
And like I said before, there's a lot of songs out there that might have some like good trending like hype content to it, but like no actual substance. And this was my way to kind of still have that energy and like be able to justify it somehow.
Yeah, like how do you write like, you know, a famous artist or something when you're not, right? Well, this whole storyline, this whole creative universe that you've put together, you know, allows you to like encompass that kind of energy at times, which is that's dope, dude. That's dope.
People ask me, like, you even asked, are you a rapper, a singer, or whatever? I don't tell people I'm even like a musician. I like prefer to be a storyteller first.
Dope.
It's more fulfilling.
Yeah.
That I put out something that like has a good like story to it, you know?
And that's when the grind part comes in, right? Like this, you know, I knew that you'd be a motivational talker, right? But just the fact that you want to tell this story and you're willing to learn how to make music and work on your singing and work on this production and work on all this stuff to get your story across is what I think is like important, right? You got to grind, dude, to put something impressive out. You know what I'm saying? You might not have been a natural singer or a natural, like, you know, beat maker, but you were able to like have this vision and work hard on all the other skills that allowed you to tell the story, right?
Yeah.
And that's fucking impressive, dude.
I feel like I heard this in a podcast with your old roommate Blake. Mm-hmm. He was talking about like how computer science, like, you don't have to like be into computer science necessarily to do it, mm-hmm. but like sometimes it's a useful tool because it compels you to do like the thing you're actually trying to like go towards. That really resonated with me because mm-hmm. I felt that.
Well, that's kind of how I am with Drive, right? Like I have this vision and like all this stuff I do with I do a lot of coding and I do a lot of marketing. Like I'm not passionate about marketing or coding. Like I'm passionate about this fitness thing. And, like, at times I've even gotten out of shape, you know, because I code so much. And it's hard to care about one thing and do all these other things, right, to lead into that, you know, passion. And you can lose yourself. But if you can keep that vision strong, if it's strong enough, you keep it all together and you can funnel all these other talents into it, then the shit pays off, dude, you know? And it seems like you've definitely reached that point with this album. When I made a little bit of music, I had a hard time telling a story on a song, right? It's hard to put together 3 verses that all correlate with each other. A lot of artists can't do that. They can't keep a theme for 3 verses. Yeah. Now, to keep a theme through a whole album, like that, it's not an easy task. You know what I'm saying? That must have taken at least, I don't know, like a year.
It took almost 2 years to do the whole thing. Yeah.
That's what I would assume, dude. Yeah, that's 2 years is a long time to kind of hold on to this vision and keep it going, right? You know, it's got to be easy to give up.
People will even tell you to give up. I'm sure, I mean, I don't know if you've been into, like, run into that scenario, but people are like, are you still trying to do this?
My own parents, dude. My own parents, like, oh, you still doing that? Matt's own parents, they both have asked us, oh, you're still doing that thing, that fitness app? We're like, yeah, dude. Why would we give up on our dream? Like, what do you mean are we still doing it? Of course we're still doing it. And it's just like so offensive. You're just like, I can't believe people who are even the people who are closest to me in my life are like questioning if I'm still trying for this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've run into that a lot. My parents have kind of come around to it. I don't really give them a reason not to. I wanted to be able to do both things. Like, I wanted to, like, do a career in what I did in school, and I wanted to do this alongside. And I've found ways to, like, parallel them. So I'm at the point now where it's, like, one profession can help me do the other thing. By, like the income I get from, like, my day job allows me to do a little more experimenting with certain aspects of what I really am passionate about on the side, which is music. And my goal is to try and find a healthy balance so I can sustain both of them.
Let's transition then to your day job. We met at an internship at Vitae, right? We were both software developers, and you're still working there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. So when we were there, we worked on a ping pong app together, right? We learned a bunch of like HTML, CSS, JavaScript type skills. And by the end of that internship, we had worked on this ping pong app that you kind of were like the leader on. You want to talk about that app a little bit?
We used to play ping pong all the time, you know, like after work or like during work. Every week someone would teach us a new thing, whether it's the HTML, the JavaScript. We even did database and stuff at some point. And at the end, they were like, take everything you've learned or anything you're interested in and find a way to combine it and present it to the whole company at the end. For your Drive Fitness app, you were very much into the stats and how to format that to show on an app. And then Keenan, who's not even like, he wasn't even there for development, but he like grew really comfortable with SQL and liked database stuff. And I was very interested in finding a way to like have all those things tie in. At the end of the day, we took the things we were passionate about and kind of made this ping pong app that let you enter in your stats and manage that on like a community level. The CEO was like, I'll fund this for like a few years if you guys get it to that point, you know? So that was a good experience. That was like my first time doing something that could be used by like multiple people.
Same. I loved that internship because, like you were saying, they gave us the flexibility to do what we wanted. So the way this internship was set up is that we would have like an hour-long class a day, basically, right, where they teach us a skill. It was basically web development. They did dip a little bit into mobile, but that was just kind of using web languages, you know, in a mobile platform, which is I've described in the past on my app, how I still do it today. So they kind of set me up, right, for the way I learned how to build my app today. But they would just teach us for like an hour, and then we'd have like 6 hours of the day to go do whatever we want. We'd go apply that knowledge. Specifically software developers, right? It's really important to let them go experiment with things and mess with stuff. And I remember one of the other, Jordan, one of he was building all sorts of like scripts and really cool stuff and stuff that like we would not have made if it was a more structured program, right? It was just enough structure to teach us the skills, but then it was flexible enough where we could go do all sorts of cool stuff, man. And like you said, we ended up building that ping pong app, and it was something that the company kind of kept around as, you know, something for their employees to use. It was a cool experience.
Yeah, it was great.
So you continued to work for Vitae, right?
Yeah.
So once you finished school, what has that been like? What kind of languages do you use in your job? What kind of projects are you working on?
You'll probably hear a lot of computer science people say this, but like nothing you learn in school gets literally translated into what you do full time.
I feel like you're learning how to learn.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. You learn a lot of languages as you go throughout each semester or like even each year. It teaches you a new skill. Like it teaches you a new perspective on how to like approach programming. Like the syntaxes are different, but aside from that, the basic logic and principle is the same. And the like throughout your like college career, you just learn how to adapt to the new syntax and the new circumstance under which you're working. And that kind of like persisted even into like full-time working. Now I do front-end development primarily, and so I use like that whole stack with like CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, and we use like an Angular framework on JavaScript.
That's what we learned, though. I thought you said
it's very different from what we did. We did Angular JS back then, and now it's like it's basically like, I mean, you've done some mobile app development at this point, I'm assuming, right? Like, you know, like they have like life cycle type of stuff. You have different actions for like when it first loads and when it gets destroyed. The scope in which you handle certain like scenarios is very different from what we were doing before. So like I remember like when we were doing Angular, it was more about like data binding between like the JavaScript code and like the HTML code. It still does that, but it's like there's like so much more you can build around it. It's just like a glorified way of saying there's like a shortcut for organizing how things are built, and it like makes like components really easy to build and reuse throughout your app. When I said like it's nothing like what we did before, it's more like from school to work.
But the internship was like a bridge.
The internship is my first introduction to that, and that was one of my most favorite like experiences because it's like school, like they teach you all these things, but they never teach you how to apply it to anything. And so this is my first time being able to learn something from scratch and immediately knowing how it applies in the real world. At work, same thing. You learn, I mean, like I don't change my language like every couple of months, but like you get to be very comfortable with it.
Are you working on a mobile application or a web?
So we're working on a web application.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, dude. I'm glad that you are still working there and enjoying that experience. I thought that was a great company, dude. I love Vitae. I kind of want to switch back to music in a minute, but is there anything else that you want to add just about like your experience with software development, advice for maybe people coming up in the software development world, you know, who are in college right now or even in high school thinking about taking computer science on as a major?
You don't have to start out being really good at it. At the end of the day, it's just like rule-based logic. You can literally go to Code Academy right now, take like a beginner's course, and like you'll know right then and there like if you're capable of doing something like that or not. You know, if you can get through that in one language, like people will say this, like every language is just like a fancier, it's like a different shortcut to do the same thing. If you can like master it on any language, then you have what it takes to do it in a different thing. Like a lot of people are scared. They're like, oh, I really like Python, but I don't know how to do JavaScript. But you know how to do logical thinking, you know? So like it's not a problem. It's just a matter of learning the different syntaxes.
So take like a beginner course somewhere, and if you can think on that level, then you can keep pushing forward, right?
For sure.
Yeah, as long as you have the determination. It gets competitive, right? And it's kind of a tough major, but if you kind of have that drive and motivation, it's a really, really good skill to have. And it's really profitable right now. And we need more developers out there for sure.
They don't really care if you've majored in it or not. You can take a certification online, for example, and that would be enough. A lot of these places, they like make you do practical like solutioning like on a whiteboard or something. And if you can do that, then they're like, all right, this guy or girl has what it takes to like solve the type of problems we're aiming to solve. Like one guy I work with, he's a senior developer, 6 figures. He never went to college. He just like read a lot of books. He knows everything he knows because of that, you know?
Dude, I kind of think that like universities are going out of style, dude. It's kind of weird, especially for computer science, right? You can learn everything you need to learn online. Like you do not need a degree. Like there's people that can step out of high school, learn what you need to learn in like 2 years, and get on with their career if they're motivated enough. You know?
No, it's true. I mean, like
for my old job at tech support, right? Like they were trying to hire people, and I was like, why don't we just hire a bunch of high school grads into tech support and just get this shit going? Like, why do you need a 4-year degree? I don't know. All the knowledge is just there. It's
just formalized. Like you're paying for the piece of paper, you know, at the end of the day, and it sucks. I mean, I think we're growing out of that a little bit, but it's in no way like that's not the new standard yet. You know, it's like people will bend the rules. Like a lot of startups, for example, they don't care. They're like, if like they'll literally be like, if you have the right attitude and you're willing to put in the work, then we'll give you a chance. And you know, like those type of places are great because like a lot of like great things have come from those type of like companies, you know. So
yeah, it's weird with the pandemic and everything. Certain things like online shopping trends have accelerated, you know, like we all used to go to malls a little bit more, and I wonder if it's going to affect like education. I mean, people already knew you could get a equal education online. I wonder if this whole situation is going to accelerate the rate that people are like, nah, I'm just going to go to school online. Like, I'm not going to go to a university.
I don't know if you've heard, like, AMC had this whole thing. Like, I think it was like that Trolls movie. Without, like, talking to the theaters, they just kind of went straight to video on demand instead of theaters. And that movie made the most money any of their studio movies I've ever made. And so now they're like, we're going to skip that formal step of going through a theater first, because it's a waste of time and we're not profiting as much, you know? So I think that same thing will like bleed into all these other industries, especially like when it comes to education.
No, I think that there'll be a decrease in malls, but I think we're about to see the end of movie theaters. I don't think that industry is going to make it, dude, because personally, I'm not stepping in a movie theater for another year at least. Like, why am I going to take that risk? But let's switch gears back to music for a minute. Music is kind of left field, right, for what I'm doing, but I feel like there is some knowledge I can extract out and be like, okay, how can I apply this to drive fitness? You know, how do you market your music?
Every time I've been asked that, the answer has always changed. And I think that kind of just goes to show that as time goes on, especially like what you're saying, everything is more internet driven these days. Your strategies have to slowly evolve over time. When I first started, everyone's like, word of mouth is the best way to go. Tell your friend, tell their friends to tell friends, like so on and so forth. But like over time, I've like realized that it's much harder to get people to do like a call to action. And so now I've leaned more into ways to use the internet to my advantage instead of pouting about how it's making things harder. So I've delved into like advertising. I've delved into playlist placements because on Spotify,
that's huge for you.
Spotify specifically is like it's crazy. Like now it's a little saturated now, which makes it harder. But there's like a lot of benefit in the sense that, one, it's like a good way for passive income. The thing I don't like about playlists is the retention, like, of the listeners of playlists. Like, you think about it, if you just pick up a random playlist, you're not necessarily actively listening and being like, oh, like, I love this artist, I'm so glad they're on this playlist.
You might get one stream off of it, but you're not going to get a like, right? You're not. It's not going to get added to their library.
Yeah, Spotify really pays attention to those type of statistics. Like, do they skip the song? How much of the song do they listen to? Like, what timestamp do they skip? Like, all those type of random things matter to them. That's been what I pay attention to when I do market. Before, I used to do the playlist thing 100%. But the problem is now you're at the mercy of that like curator. Like if they take you off of that, your entire like source of like money from that is gone. I didn't know that at first. I would spend for an entire month, I would reach out to 60 plus curators every single day.
Wow. With
like maybe a 10% success rate. It worked really well at first, but the second you stop, you have to hope they keep you on. Otherwise, that nothing will come of that.
That's a full-time job, basically, right? You got to keep.
It's time-consuming and it's mentally very taxing to do.
Yeah, one of my first podcast episodes has like the most amount of streams because I spent like a week just texting everybody I knew, right? And I didn't do that for the other ones, and then they didn't, get as many downloads because I'm like, I can't spend all my time texting people, like just constantly like promoting myself like directly, right? It's time consuming and exhausting, because you face a lot of rejection, right? There's a lot of people that don't hit you back, and you're like, crap, dude, fuck.
Yeah, I mean, there'll people that'll actively be like, you should stop doing these kind of things. I don't know what thrill they get out of shutting people down. It's like sometimes people will like be super harsh, but like
it's wild how much influence these playlists like Rap Caviar has, right? If you get on Rap Caviar, that's like huge.
Those, you only have one opportunity to really pitch to them, and that's right before it releases. Like they have like an app for artists where you can fill out an application to submit to those things.
Have you filled it out?
I filled it out. They only let you do one song at a time. We didn't get anything. Those are very competitive to get. I did the experiment where for a month I went on this grind, and I was like, it was paying off in the moment. But as soon as I stop, you see like the trend like go down, And I was like, I need to find something else. because whatever I'm doing is not sustainable. I'm gonna burn out like every other day, and it's not satisfying, you know. And so I went into targeted advertisement instead. And what's really cool about that is there's something called a conversion campaign. You can run it like on Facebook ads, and there's like other ones out there, I'm sure, but Facebook is the one I'm using right now.
Yeah, I use that too.
And have you done there's like conversion campaigns?
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen landing pages for like music where like they give you a link to an album and you can select, I want to listen to it on Spotify.
Oh, I have one
Music.
of those, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like one of those things. And what you can do is you can embed like an event
Smart
listener.
URL is what I use.
Yeah, so I don't know if Smart URL has it. I'm using something called ToneDen. You can embed something called like a Facebook pixel onto it. And basically what it'll do is when you run this site through your ad, it'll keep track of like the actions that a user does on those things. When you run like a regular ad, like on Instagram, for example, you throw money at it, you give it like a demographic, it'll definitely run the ad, but it's not like smart about it. It'll just throw your money in every which direction, and then you kind of have to hope something sticks, right?
Yeah.
But what this does, it'll keep track of who goes all the way through and clicks on a platform on your landing page. It'll fire back to Facebook ads and be like, this person, not only did he click on the original link, but he took it a step further and picked the platform. So he's more engaged with what you were doing.
I need this.
Yeah, and what's awesome about that is they have all like the metadata of that person, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, we're gonna find everyone who fits this dude's demographic and now serve the ads to them, you know? And so as the ad runs longer and longer, the smarter it gets. It's using some kind of machine learning.
Whoa.
What's awesome about that is the longer you run the ad, the smarter it gets, the more results you get. And because it's easier for them to figure out who to send it to, your cost per conversion goes like way down. So right now I can convert someone for 5 cents. For you, I guarantee you if you dive into that, you'll definitely find some success in that area, because it's like it can apply to anything.
That's cool. Yeah, so where I'm at is I'll just pay like $20-$30 for like an advertisement campaign, and that's it. And like I'll be like, oh, I reached 1,000 people, or you know, even 200 people liked this thing, but I look at the streams on the podcast, they won't budge barely. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, okay, I'm like getting my advertisement in front of people, but it's not being effective, you know? And now that I think about it, right, if I get a product advertisement, I'll click on that, I'll be like, oh, I might want to buy that. But then I move on with my day, right? I didn't actually make the purchase. Then all of a sudden I see that product come back and back and back, and I'm like, oh, I should buy that for like months. And then eventually I buy it. It took time to like kind of get me in, which is like the same thing with, I guess, our songs and podcasts, right? It's like someone's going to see it and be like, oh, I should listen to that song. And then move on with their scrolling, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to come back to them and then remind them and be like, hey, and eventually they'll stream your podcast or something. But just because they clicked on it doesn't mean you've locked in a sale or locked in a stream at that moment.
Exactly.
And for your songs too, right? You want people to continue to listen. So even if they've already streamed it, you know, if you remind them again, like they might just forget. And now you got to remind them, I guess, like, hey, remember me.
Yeah, songs like respectively are easier because it's like you hear it, all right, I'm gonna add that to my playlist real quick, you know. But like going on like an expensive vacation takes a little more convincing. So another cool thing about these ads is you can set up like a conversion window. So you'd be like, all right, like I'm selling a product that might take people a few passes before they're fully convinced. There are options to like optimize for those kind of things.
I have a smart URL. It's in my Instagram bio. I do an ad on Facebook, but those are not, they're definitely not communicating with each other. They definitely don't tell each other like, oh, this guy clicked on it, you know, but he didn't listen to it, or I don't know how to sync those up.
So as far as I'm aware, they can only keep track of it if it's the link that people click from the ad itself.
So I feeded that, but I don't know if it's telling it what it knows.
So there's something you have to set up called a Facebook pixel. I use ToneDen specifically because it's catered to music. I don't know if it does anything else, but I chose it because to embed these pixels, sometimes they cost money, but I use ToneDen just because I found out that you can do it for free. And so it already comes, like when you fill out the information to set up the link, there's like a section for tracking, and you can just type in the unique ID when you set it up with Facebook.
Okay. You feed the URL to Facebook ads, but then you got to get a Facebook pixel and feed that to whatever URL you're using.
Yeah, you can embed it. And like, so there is options. You have a website, for example, right? What you can do is if someone clicks like download or someone clicks buy, you can have that fired like a specific action back to Facebook advertising. Like, so like for my stuff, when they click on a streaming service, it fires like a view content listener, right? So that tells them, all right, someone went to this website and took the action that we're trying to get everyone to do. You know, like for you, like you're trying to get someone to download your app, right? If they're writing to your website, you can literally program it in. Like if they click this button, fire off purchase.
We built our own website originally, right? And I just, because we could, right? We were developers, but we just switched over. I switched this to Squarespace, which I think this is going to start taking care of all that stuff for me. So I haven't really kind of dug my nails in there and figured out how to get all these analytics to show me stuff and to communicate with our advertisements. But I think there's got to be ways, you know, with my Squarespace website to link it into everything and to get those analytics, you know, running.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I remember correctly, a lot of those like Squarespace, Wix, and all those type of websites, they let you embed like your own code into it.
Yeah, I have our smart URL now embedded into it. I have the podcast embedded. I have a bunch of different, you know, outlets.
I think as long as you can run JavaScript to some capacity, you should be able to do the thing we were talking about.
But that's cool because I just didn't even know. I've been doing advertisements, but that's the final step too of getting that feedback loop to your smart URL and really dictating the advertisements. Because right now my advertisements are dumb as hell, dude. They just, like you said, they just spit up my ad all over Facebook. I target like whoever I want at age groups and stuff. But I stopped doing it for the podcast because I didn't see any sort of results. I'm not going to dump money into that. But hopefully if I pursue this and with the merchandise I have rolling out, hopefully too, I can target that in a different way. Marketing's not my favorite passion, right? But it's interesting, dude. It's crazy. We live in a crazy different universe of marketing than it was 20 years ago, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did not care when I first started all the music stuff, but
you have to care.
But I was like, at some point, like you have to decide if you want to go all the way with something or not. And I feel like for most scenarios, marketing is such a huge part of it. Like, you know, like there's definitely like artists out there that like make really crappy music, but they have good branding, and as a result, they can still make a living off of it. So while the talent you bring to the table is like super important, it has to coexist with some level of like business, you know.
And like I was saying, dude, I do think that your music's good. I think it's at this professional level, and I think that you're at a good place to worry about advertising, right? Like if I didn't think that, if I thought that you still needed to work on your sound or work on your music, it probably wouldn't be worth it for you to spend all your time worrying about these ads. Maybe you could sell some songs, but you don't even want to be that person that has shitty music and has a good advertising or a good brand, right? Yeah. But I do feel like this album of yours is now at a place where like spending the time worrying about ads and stuff is like worth your time because you feel like you have a good project and now you just gotta get the word out. One more thing, to bring it back to word of mouth, I do think that's still the best way. It's harder to get people to do word of mouth, but I mean, I've shown some people your songs, right? If I just send it to them, like, you know, it's a big deal. But also, if I sit down in a room with them and I play it and I'm like, yo, isn't this guy good? I think it has such a better, like, to encourage fans, maybe for my podcast and for his music, right? For both, you know, show our stuff off to people. That really, I think, still is the best way to get your word across, is to have someone literally be like, dude, this is dope. And you're like, oh, yeah, I should listen to that podcast. That podcast is dope. I don't know, people, they need at least one other person to give them the okay on shit. I don't know why. I need it too sometimes, right?
It's fair.
I'm like, you like that Drake song? And someone's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it was good. You know, like, like you just want one other person to be like, yes, dude, it's good. Like, and you're like, yes, it is good, dude. I don't know. So no, I feel like to figure out that call of action to get people on my podcast and your music to just tell their friends is the biggest thing to help us, right? You know,
I mean, I agree. I feel like currently in our world situation, that's a lot harder to do. But like, remember I was telling you about like the merch plan we had for like release party for this album. The whole point of that, we weren't trying to make money off the merch. We just wanted to bring awareness to who we were. We were making it as cheap as possible with the ability to break even. And everyone we were catering to was like people in college. If you walked onto a college campus or something and you see everyone sporting the same merch, that has to make you question, like, what am I missing out on, kind of thing, you know? And so that was kind of our whole plan with that. And I mean, that's the reason people do merch at all, to like bring awareness that way. And for example, like my brother and sister both go to Maryland right now. They have the merch before anyone else. Just those two people alone got me like 40 or 50 people regularly engaged with my stuff. Currently, it's a lot harder to do that.
Yeah, I guess right in today's day and age, it's so much harder to reach people, right? I could put your song up on my story. That doesn't really mean the same thing as if I'm like telling someone in person, but I can't tell people in person anymore.
With word of mouth, you can't like half-ass it. You have to go all the way, otherwise it has no effect. Like if you get like a handful of people to, like you said, just share it in your story or something, it's not going to go very far. But if you like have people actively advocating for you, it goes a long way.
I know that you are finished with your album, right? And so this didn't time out perfectly for you, but I feel like the pandemic is the time to grind, and then once it's over is the time to shine. Unfortunately, it's not the time to be telling everyone to download your stuff. It's the time to be making that content, you know? And that's what I'm trying to do with the podcast, is get like a bulk of like 30 episodes together, so that when the pandemic is over, I can run around in college campuses and festivals and stuff and tell people about it. So I don't know if you have another album you're working on or any music, but it is more of a grind time.
I thought what was interesting is, because of the pandemic, you kind of have a captive online audience at all times. Like what I noticed is, like, I get analytics through my Instagram of like how many of my followers are like looking at my page or are just active on the platform in general. And it like skyrocketed after quarantine. I was like, this might be a good time for me to try out all these different promotional approaches. I'd try out one approach for a month, let it die out, try the next thing, let it die out, try the next thing, let it die out. So I'm kind of like in a never-ending cycle of that.
So you're saying it's a good experimental phase,
It's a good thing, yeah. I mean, I think it's good just because in normal circumstances, you don't have a controlled environment to test these things out and know, like, oh, like this approach is definitely going to work better than this approach because there's so many variables. People have like different schedules. They're not always going to be on their phones the same way this week as compared to next week. You know, things just change. But because everyone's in such like a static lifestyle situation right now, you can try all these different things out and have like a very accurate idea of whether something is better or not, if that makes any sense. Some people like hype vibey music in the summer.
Yeah.
Because they get to go outside all the time and they like jamming to that, like when they're at the beach or something. But like, because we're inside all the time, say you make like more like moody, like, I don't know, like intimate music, you might, that appeals to people who spend more of their time inside.
Like, this is not the time to make party music.
No, because no one's going to be able parties. No one's going to be able to enjoy it to that same capacity, you know? And so like for me, I try not to make hype music all the time. I want to like make more chill stuff every now and then.
So you're marketing your chiller songs at the moment.
I'm trying to, like even the stuff I'm working on.
And like that song you told me that was kind of surprising, like this is the #1 song.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's not hype, it's not a party song, and it's not a party time of our lives.
No, it's really not. You were even saying like, why did the Red Dress song not do that well? Maybe because no one had an outlet to enjoy that. Like
that was a fun song, and it's not a fun time. Yeah,
exactly.
That's true.
So it's a cool thing to see, just because everyone lives the same life almost right now. Like to some degree, it's like a good way to get a baseline for what people are really into. So you can make the best of a bad situation. That was one of the ways I tried to do that.
Maybe this will work out to your benefit, because if you remember the first Post Malone album, like I Fall Apart was like blowing up like 2 years later or something. Maybe once the pandemic is over and people are going outside again, now you can start marketing that Red Dress song. I think that has appeal, right? But maybe you got to wait until it's warm outside, everyone's, you know, having fun again at these festivals like next summer, and then try to promote that all of a sudden and get that spun up, because it's just not the vibe at the moment.
Most definitely. I mean, we shot a whole music video for it too.
So you guys thought that one was a good one too, right?
We thought like there was we were going to make 3 videos, and it just so happened that after the first day of shooting the Red Dress video, all the pandemic stuff happened. We didn't even get to finish it, but we were like, we need to do something to like at least make sure the effort we took so far was worth the while. So like actually tomorrow we're wrapping it up.
Oh, so you're gonna release a Red Dress music video?
Yeah. So the thing is, the timing again is a big concern for us, because we're like, if we release it now, will it do well? Will people relate to it? But like, we wanted to at least have it there for when the right time comes about.
You're not as big as like other artists, right? So certain artists, like when they drop a song, everyone's gonna go flock to them, right? But since you're still on the up and coming, I think you could put out a YouTube video and then, like you were saying, maybe push some marketing angle and then have it gain traction later on.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
But I think that you're at nowhere near a point where like the minute you drop is the only minute people are going to watch it. You know what I'm saying? Is you're still gaining fans. I think, you know, people will want to come back to your old videos.
Even for an album, they're like, you're not like a top performing artist. Why are you even spending the time doing the album? Because like if you do it in a single format, you're more likely to do well. For in our scenario, we're like, we need to tell the story this way. We're not budging on that specific detail. The videos were initially going to be in that similar way. They were all going to like tie into each other somehow. We didn't get the opportunity to do that, but we want to be able to do it to some capacity still. And the timing, unfortunately, is one of those deciding factors. So you're definitely right. I'm at the point right now where I'm like, I just want to release it.
Yeah, just get it out there.
Like I said, we're wrapping it up tomorrow. Because we're not big artists, you have to make sure that whenever you do it, it counts for something.
What is your YouTube channel called?
The username is 333 and Multimedia Collective.
333 at Multimedia Collective. Okay.
It's like the label that we're all like working under.
Oh yeah, wait. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Because you were saying that before we got on mic that you're putting together a little label, right, of these artists.
Yeah. From the very beginning, like this album is supposed to serve as a portfolio for what we are capable of as artists and like marketing. We wanted something to kind of encase that and also just to protect like ourselves from like copywriting and like trademarking standpoint. We wanted to be able to have an infrastructure to be able to like flush all those things out eventually. Our whole album, like it's in the spirit of collaboration. It's in the spirit of like building like a community. Like for us, especially in the DMV, we cater so much to local artists, and we wanted to be able to do that for other people. People are very talented. People are capable of doing all these things. Half the time they just don't know what to do or where to start. So like we wanted to build something that kind of did that for other artists.
You put in all this groundwork, figuring out how to mix things, how to do things at a professional level, like you said, and now you can go find some talented artists who might have no freaking clue how to make professional level music, but he's just so good that you can kind of take him in and be like, hey, look, come join our label, and we're gonna help you out. We're gonna teach you, or we're gonna do some of these mixings for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's hype, dude. So are some of the rappers on your album part of this label?
We have no intention of making it your traditional idea of a label. We kind of want to treat it like a subscription type of thing.
Okay.
Because, you know, like everything is subscription based now. And a lot of people like don't do things because of the long-term commitment to things. And we don't want that to be like a stopping factor for people. So like the people you even hear on the album, like I would say they're more like affiliated artists instead of like label artists. I don't want to be like, oh, like we're not going to help you promote your stuff just because you're not on our label. Like we don't want to do that. Okay. You know? And like the people on our album like have like a lifetime like day one status for like for us. Like we'll definitely be out there helping them no matter what, you know?
Okay.
But like over time, like it's time consuming. It requires like, you know, like effort from our end. So like we do want to turn it into a business to some capacity, but we want to make it super accessible for all these people. Like a majority of them are like college students or work day jobs, you know? They don't have time to figure all that stuff out.
Is it mostly collaborating on the marketing, like we're all a brand together, or is it going to be collaborate? Are you going to help other artists like collaborate on the actual making of their music?
We want to be able to support at every level of that process. So Mike took the time to really learn like the skill and technique that professionals use, and like now I like would trust him with everything I do in the future sonically. I do a lot of like storytelling, songwriting. I've definitely helped people with in the past. I enjoy it a lot. I feel like I could really help. And like recently I've taken on this marketing side of things, you know?
It sounds like music consulting or something.
It really is, like to some extent. That's why I say it's not a traditional label. Traditional labels will loan you this money, and if you don't make it back, you owe us kind of thing, you know? So like we don't want to do that. A lot of people come to me for promotion, random promotional things. A lot of people come to Mike for like mixing and mastering of like their tracks or whatever, right? So what's really cool about it is from that point we can refer people within the network to each other. We're also not defined by like a genre of any sort. It's just kind of, it's all encompassing. Recently, I don't know why this genre specifically, but a lot of punk rock bands have been coming to us to promote their stuff, and I was like, for sure, like I'll definitely do it. And what'll happen is they'll send me stuff, and these kids are really, really talented, but sometimes their stuff doesn't sound like the standard I would hold if I were to make this thing, right? So what I'll do is I'll like say like I can promote your stuff, and I'm more than happy to do it because that's what I'm trying to like do long term, you know? But I'm like, I would feel more confident in my ability to do something if I can get this quality assurance from Mike, who like we're on the same page in terms of the standard that we want to represent ourselves with, you know? So what I'll end up doing is referring the people that come to me to him to do future projects, and then vice versa. When he makes something, he'll be like, this is really good, but it would be a shame if it goes unnoticed after putting all this work into it, you know? So like, why don't you take it to like the people within the collective that are capable of promoting it properly.
That's cool, man. It sounds to me like you are reimagining like a music label, reconstructing what it means to be a music label, because in the old sense, a music label would own your stuff. They'd own you, right? They're going to tell you what to do and what to make, basically, because you need all this funding to make music, right? And we're living in this era where anyone can make a podcast, anyone can make a music, anyone can be an influencer, right? People are their own boss. It's like this age of startups or something. People have told me like, do not sign to a label with your podcast. You don't need them. You just need a freaking microphone. Back in the day, you might have needed a studio or something to make music or a podcast, but like you're just gonna have this label that owns your stuff, right? And they're gonna have say over what you do. You're reimagining the label as in it's like, hey, you're hiring us to help you almost, right? Like you're gonna pay the subscription, we're gonna help you, because it definitely helps to have feedback and stuff and just guidance, right? Like you could do this all yourself, but we know how to, so let us help you. Yeah. We're not going to oversee you like a label. You're not going to be signed to us. We're not going to own you. You're going to be your own boss, and like we're just going to be this entity that helps you market, collaborate, get feedback, fine-tune your product, because it is scary to be on your own, right? Like as much as you don't need a label these days, people they're just on their own trying to make it on this internet game, and it's good to have some sort of unit to like refer to, for just all these things.
Because so many people can do it by themselves now, it's like it's a little oversaturated. Standing out in that crowd of people now able to do it so easily, like we need to like establish some set of standards. So like we're still fulfilling that initial goal of wanting to help other people, but we're making sure we set them up to do really well, and it also like reflects well on us to the point where we can enhance like the quality of product for like more and more people, like as it grows over time.
That's cool, man. I didn't think of you quite as like an entrepreneur when you walked in here. I knew that being an artist was similar, right?
Yeah.
But this whole music consulting kind of label you're kind of putting together really feels like a real company that's starting to form, connected but separate from you just being an artist.
Yeah, I mean, and like when I started, had no intention of doing it, but over time, like you really like get a very in-depth perspective as to who you are as a person and what you can actually bring to the table. And like honestly, what you can't bring to the table, And what we learned is each of us wanted to do all these things. And at the end of the day, we found out which ones we were most proficient in and how they can like work together to like accomplish a common goal. This album, not just the recording itself, but how it was brought to life, how we involved people in it, how we marketed it to people, how we branded it, like all that stuff. It's all one big showcase for what we can possibly do for you along with ourselves in the future. And proof by example, that's like the best way to do it. And we did it on such a granular scale that like I couldn't think of a better way to start off that whole process. So,
no, I agree, man. I think that you pushed a lot of boundaries. All these marketing boundaries and things we're talking about are things that musicians are not naturally good at necessarily, and to just sit on that knowledge might be a waste, right? Let's share it. Let's just help other people out. For sure.
It's a good thing to self-discover and do stuff on your own, but like at the end of the day, when you can finally agree with a group of people and do something, like it always makes something better. If you were to build an app by yourself, you could probably come up with something really great, But like over time, you'll realize while I can do like this one particular thing, it might be a lot better if I bring in someone who's like well versed in it to help me like bring my vision to fruition, And so like we did that a lot in this album, and that kind of inspired me to be like, that person helped me a lot to like make the specific like song sound really good. I want to be able to do that for other people too, And like the networking aspect of it also speaks volumes behind the scenes.
I used to do everything myself. Then I started working with some software developers who helped me code the app. But as time goes on, more and more I'm looking elsewhere to delegate stuff, because just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should. What I try to do is I try to get in the weeds, and I try to figure out how to do something, make sure I could do it on my own, and then reach out. With the animations, I built like several on my own. They all worked great, and then now I needed 1,000, so now I like started looking elsewhere, like, hey, you want to help me? But now I have this perfect design, and now I can go in and I can tweak them as well, right? Like I got my hands real in there, and I understood how they work and brought myself up to speed on that knowledge before I reached out for help. I don't think it would have been worth my time to sit down and build all 1,000 animations myself. It's definitely a hard choice, whether or not to pursue it on your own. But I like your whole just collaborative mindset, right? I think that's really how you get big shit done in life. I think some of the most successful people were just curating really good collaborations.
That's what DJ Khaled does. It's like his whole thing. He's like very good at bringing all the right people into the room.
You should use someone like Kanye or something. Don't promote DJ Khaled.
He doesn't
do anything. I don't
but I mean, like, so like people think a producer means like beat maker. It's actually just making sure that something comes together at the end of the day in the best possible way. From what I understand, you're right. He doesn't come up with the pattern that ends up in the final thing, but he's like, all right, I need this type of energy brought out for this track. I know exactly who to call on to call the proper shots for that specific thing. So he's basically a master of delegating. That's what he is in my eyes.
You know, if you're going to bring up Khaled, I'm going to bring up Kanye, because I was going to bring him up earlier. When you were talking about your album, right, it kind of reminded me of like my Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, because you were talking about how you would give these artists direction, right? Every artist that's on that album played a certain role in the story that Kanye was like playing along the way, right?
Okay.
And like I know, for instance, like on Runaway, Pusha T, he was like, "You got to be more of an asshole. You got to be more of an asshole," right? And I was wondering, you already went into it about how you kind of got these artists to bring out certain type of rap that kind of fit into your story, but I don't know, man. Don't sell yourself short and be the DJ Khaled, dude. Fucking.
I didn't realize.
I don't think DJ Khaled does enough. I don't think he does. Like, I don't think he's as involved with the creative process. I think he's just kind of like the face of his music. You're more in the weeds, you know.
He probably started in the weeds and like slowly came out of it. But like, I liked what you were saying, how like even though like you're delegating, you still like to be in the weeds and know what's going on beforehand. And I'm the same way. Like,
you gotta find a balance.
A lot of the instrumentation that happened, like Mike did a lot of it, like because it was very guitar heavy and he knows that inside and out, and he took the initiative on his own to like learn like the intricacies of everything. I can probably do those things, but it wouldn't do it justice, you know? And so like I still sat down in every single session and made sure like this is exactly what we wanted, and I made sure the vision was upkept and stuff like that. You just have to be like mature and like humble enough to realize when you're not the person for the job, and still help out in any capacity that you can.
Yeah.
And that was like a tough pill to swallow at first, because it's like, again, like I did the whole blasé thing because I wanted to be on my own and not be restricted in that way. But I've learned to step back and like appreciate the beauty and like having people who are really talented at what they do add more value to the thing you're already doing.
I think as long as you're just trying to understand as much as possible what's going on and stay in the loop, then you'll be fine. Like, you don't want an album with your name on it to show up on your desk and you'd be like, okay, cool. Understand as much as possible, but yeah, if you want to make the best quality stuff, like, you're gonna have to delegate and go to the best people for the job, right?
A lot of this, like the lyrical content that came out of our album, I wouldn't have thought of those things unless Mike played a very specific thing on guitar. All of our demos were like on guitar, pretty much. And I just riffed on it, and then we built the rest around what I came up with, you know?
Wow. So his production and his instrumentation really inspired a lot of the lyrics.
Really inspired it. I've been making like random demos like since day one of me making music. I've been able to notice the shift in mentality versus when it's something I made from scratch versus when it's something that someone else made from scratch. A part of me like feels like I'm trying to like think on the same page as that person to some extent, and it just gets you thinking differently, you know? Like, it's like the whole concept of brainstorming in a think tank, for example. You might have a good idea, but like when you talk to someone else about that idea and they say something, it might not necessarily be like the idea you want to go with, but it might inspire you to elaborate on your own. And that's definitely what happened. Like, I knew I wanted to talk about certain things in each song, but if I hadn't bounced a lot of those things with him, like I was literally just having a conversation about what I wrote, and I'm like, wait a minute, I can make all of these things connect in a concept album, and that's how we did the concept album. Even like the choices we made in sounds, the choices we made in people involved, and like just the general creative direction was all inspired because every day I would have like an hour conversation with him. That goes underappreciated a lot. Like, people don't realize that. It's like, it's one of those tiny details. If you miss it, you might be missing out on something huge.
I used to always talk to everyone about Drive Fitness all the time because it would sharpen my ideas and change. Every single person I talked to would help me bounce something off of them. It'd come back a little bit different, and then I'd twist it. And that's why I started doing the podcast too, to like get it like officially put my ideas down and out there. And even just yesterday, dude, I put together this little video for our Patreon account of an idea I had, and then as I'm editing it, like, my idea changed again, you know, and I'm like, I gotta make another video because it's different by this point. Your ideas are just different in your head until you get them out into the open, and then they take shape. Especially when you're having a conversation with someone, they're just like, that really wasn't the way it was in my head. Now that I've kind of bounced it back and forth with you, it's like it sharpens it like a pencil or something, you know. And it's like much stronger.
And it's fulfilling too. There's like an initial high when you first come up with the idea. We were talking about being persistent with it. Like, that definitely helps, like bouncing it off, reaffirming like your initial thing, you know, in any way possible. Again, 2 years, it's very easy to get sidetracked in that time, but constantly talking to people and learning from them allows you to maintain that vision.
Dude, that's a lot of good stuff you're putting out there. I love this episode. We're going to tie it up soon. It's probably been like 2 hours, dude. I have no clue, but
Yeah, I don't know.
Basically, I don't know. I think I love this episode because I sit down with a lot of fitness people and technology people, and like, I don't know, I do think of myself as like a creative, right? And talking to a musician is kind of off brand for me. Obviously, we had a lot of cool, interesting things to talk about, but dude, it's just cool to sit down with someone who like also considers themselves like a creative person, and just to hear like the way you work through ideas and stuff, dude. It's been fucking awesome, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've enjoyed our conversation a lot too.
Yeah, it's been dope.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give you one final plug. You are blasé on Spotify, right, and Apple Music. And your album's called Vitae.
Vitae. Yeah.
All right. Do you have any just final words on music making or life in general?
Don't put off doing something just because you think you're not going to be able to compete with whoever's already doing it, because it's literally just like a Google search or a YouTube video away from you being able to do it. Everything we've done has come from that, so nothing is stopping you.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Guys, go follow your dream. Go follow your passion. The pandemic is the time to grind.
Gotta walk a little cautious, money in my pockets. I could turn a penny to a profit. Baby, I don't wanna wait days on you. We could lay our cards out, get straight to the truth. Got a flight out tomorrow, could change that too. We could smoke on the deck of the hotel room. And I do believe that if you let me, I could be the one for you. God only knows what I'm doing, I suppose. God only knows. Yeah. Red dress, I just wanna get to know your red dress. It's getting late in California, God bless. When I see you coming over, red